Away from Nigeria, Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 58 Palestinians in Gaza over the past 24 hours, with several children among the dead. This brings the death toll from Israel's genocidal war since October 2023 to 50,810. The United Nations has warned that Israeli attacks on Gaza are now killing or injuring 100 children a day. A ministry statement said that 213 more injured people were also transferred to hospitals in the last 24 hours, taking the number of the injured to 115,688 in the Israel onslaught. Now, Rwanda has commemorated the 1994 genocide that claimed the lives of at least 800,000 people, mostly from the Tutsi community, who were massacred by the Hutu militia. Speaking at the event, President Kagame assured that the genocide will never happen in Rwanda again, not because those who planned and facilitated it will not try to do so again, but because Rwandans have chosen to stand together so that it never happens again. In 2014, the United Nations and the African Union designated April 7 as a day of remembrance for the 1999 genocide against the Hutus. Adeniyi Kunnu is an international journalist and policy analyst. He joins me now to discuss the Rwandan genocide, among other issues around its democracy. Good to have you on the news. The Rwandan government declared 7 days of reflection to mark this year's event. How significant is that?
Well, I want to say thank you first for having me in the program. I think that the Rwandan lesson, it's a lesson for every one of us, first on the African continent. It is because what resulted in the genocide that claimed over 800 lives was because a president was killed, and before we knew what was going on, it became killing spree between the Hutu and the Tutsi. But basically, we know those that suffered more in that genocide. Now, one of the things that Africa needs to take from there is that there are lots of things that still continues to happen on the continent that we're not paying attention to. You have to ask yourself, why was a president killed before the massacre ensued? If you go to other parts of the African continent, you see despotic leadership. If you go to Cameroon, for instance, in Central Africa, you find out that Cameroon has not learned the lesson from the Rwandan genocide. A president who cannot hold himself is leading them. A Senate president who cannot stand erect is leading them. The people that hold key positions in Cameroon are those that cannot even see the road clearly. Some people have been crying for many years that that shouldn't happen, but they've not been able to assimilate the lessons of the genocide there. That when it gets to a point, there is frustration. Frustration leads to anger, and anger leads to unpredictable outcomes. For Rwanda, I'm happy that there's been what I've described as proper evolution through what they've done. You know, there are lots of things that happened to Paul Kagame took over power in 1994. And what has he been able to do? He's been able to, first of all, ensure that there's a healing process, enable what I've described as proper reconciliation process, and he has paid key attention to the economy of Rwanda, such that the country has become a tourist hub. There's a reconscientization of people into the new identity of Rwanda, such that the pains and losses of the past have become something they've been able to uproot. 31 years, for goodness sake, 3 decades and one. So as far as I'm concerned, Rwanda remains an example for many African countries. For instance, there's a lot of division in Nigeria now. Don't make a mistake about it. And one of the things that could lead Nigeria into the kind of the Rwandan genocide that we see is what has been happening in recent times, where terrorists are taking over lands that do not belong to them, and they're entering into different farmlands. And the government looks away, and even terrorists are becoming part of societies, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, getting married, becoming those that hold traditional positions, and the government looks away. A situation where the government looks away from terrorists that carry AK-47 rifles and still arrest those that have to use guns to protect their own farm, the government is a joke. So we have to keep looking at what happened in Rwanda, not just the genocide, but the issues that predated the genocide. We had Okuta panel in this country, where some people felt they were bigger than the Okuta panel years ago, to allow for some kind of reconciliation. So it means, therefore, that if Nigeria must heal, it has to be somebody who is completely lacking in sentiment for any religion, but very well emotional to the cause of Nigerians. So don't forget, Paul Kagame himself was a military officer who obviously went to war before he did that, but has been able to demonstrate, especially for people who never knew that he was in the military, that as a former military man who mediated the country into the reconciliation that it still enjoys, is also somebody who is blind to the divisions created before the genocide between the Hutus and the Tutsi. So right now we're talking about three predominant tribes in Nigeria. You're talking about Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa.
There's but like Mr. Kunnu, I mean, I could listen to you speak all day, but we are constrained. So please go ahead and talk about maybe not just the experience of genocide and what led to it, but the reconciliatory effort and this special designation of a memorial. What can other African countries, particularly Nigeria, learn from that?
I think we really need to have a unifying force in a leader of a country. The reason everybody accepts and actually admitted all of the things that happened during the reconciliation was simply because Paul Kagame was a unifying force. Nobody perceived him to be somebody who was supporting a particular tribe, a particular ethnic group, and that enabled them to see that clearly he wanted the country to unite. So I think the first thing we need to do is to have an elected leader who can unify the country, where nobody sees him or her, hopefully, as somebody who perhaps is taking sides or is not able to prosecute justice, among the respective hegemonies of Nigerian politics. So that's one. And another lesson for Africa, so I've talked about Nigeria, is that very little thing can trigger what results in, or what could result in the downfall of a regime. If you look at Northern Africa and you even look at the Arab Spring, it started evidently in Tunisia, where a 22-year-old graduate got himself involved in self-immolation. Then he moved to Egypt. In Egypt, you have Hosni Mubarak removed from office, you have Mohamed Morsi. Those are the kinds of things that happen if you don't prevent it. So for Nigeria and many African countries to not fall into the Rwandan example that resulted in the killing, we have to prevent every kind of disaffection in the country.
Mr. Kunnu, at the heart of your submission is the quality of leadership that we get unbiased at the end of the day to get things done. Thank you very much for speaking with us. We have to leave it there for now.
Thank you for the privilege of being on your show. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're most welcome.